Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a crime drama from the United States, English language, released in the year 2019, directed by Craig Zahler, and this film is called Dragged Across Concrete. So Dragged Across Concrete is about two detectives, they're partners, and they don't really follow the rules. They're a little bit, rebellious, and unfortunately there is something that is captured by a camera that goes on the news that implicates them in something pretty dodgy, and so they're going to be suspended. Now, unfortunately, one of the police officers, he actually has a family that he wants to support because his wife has MS and she's in a bad way, and now that he's been suspended, he just doesn't know how to get the money. So he actually confides in his partner, and he says that, okay, they're suspended, they can't really do much, so what he wants to do is actually go into the criminal world and get a bit of money that way. So the partner's reluctant at first, but then he's managed to be convinced because this man, he gives him a sob story, and they say, okay, let's do this. And what they're going to try and do is take money from a robbery that's about to take place. And so they're planning it all out, but things aren't going to go as planned, and what happens at that point on and whether or not they can get what they want is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on Dragged Across Concrete. This was a very enticing film. Not only is Craig Zahler a very good director, but it's also had Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn. Now they are two, very recognisable actors, and whenever they're in a film, it's going to draw attention. And so Craig Zahler, for me, his best film was Bone Tomahawk. I thought that was an absolutely fantastic movie. That was his first movie that really got him recognised as far as I'm concerned. But then he made a movie called Brawl in Cell Block 99. And so Brawl in Cell Block 99, it wasn't a great film. And that was unfortunate because I thought it had promised to be a great film, but I just don't think it was executed very well. I thought some of the special effects were a little bit dodgy, and I just thought it was definitely in the shadow of Bone Tomahawk. Bone Tomahawk was so much better, and so I've said in previous reviews, a lot of directors can't really live up to their standard, and Craig Zahler was one of those directors. Coming into his follow-up film, it was nowhere near as good, in my opinion. I know a lot of people out there love that movie, so each to their own, but for me, I just thought it was a step below his standard. And so coming into Dragged Across Concrete, I didn't know what to expect. It was a different kind of film once again. That's something I like about this director. He has his own style, but he doesn't copy what he's done before. And so this is a different kind of film, and I was umming and ahhing about what this was going to bring. I thought the calibre of acting promised, had Jennifer Carpenter in it as well, and so it promised a very good experience. But unfortunately, I will say that although Dragged Across Concrete is better than Brawl in Cell Block 99, it's still nowhere near as good as Bone Tomahawk, and I believe that this movie gets lost in the talent that it has, and this is something I'll go into a little bit later. But what I like about Dragged Across Concrete is Craig Zahler, he is able to create a very quirky atmosphere, and that atmosphere is very particular to his style, and that's just a very cold and blank look that this world has. This is a world where these dodgy people, even though we associate police with the good guys, he still paints characters in a way that is very realistic. And you don't know really who to root for, is because there's no real good guy in it. That was the case with pretty much all of his films, is that these characters are painted in a way where they're devoid of happiness. It just feels like this is a very depressing atmosphere. And so it has a very grindhouse feel to it. I thought the soundtrack matched the grindhouse feel that the movie really wants, which is a trademark of this director. But the beauty of it is that he has his trademark, but he's using it in different ways. And so this is a crime film. This is a movie about police officers being drawn into a very desperate situation, and it's something that you could relate to because these police officers wanted the best for their families, and they were basically forced into this world, and when they get into this world, it's a very dark and nasty sort of feeling that you get. This is a very violent film, which is a very trademark of this director. If you've seen his other films, you know that the violence is extreme, and this is no different. This is a very extreme film as far as violence is concerned. The violence is used very sparingly, so it does hit you very hard, and the way that it's used is just very high impact, so be very careful going into an Craig Zahler film if you are sensitive to excessive violence. And so I thought that was all very decent, and the script was fantastic. And so the characters, when they're interacting with each other, it never really got boring. And so I thought, okay, well, when they're going back and forward with each other, I thought it was very quirky, very different. It was reminiscent of Quentin Tarantino, where you can build a theatric scene based on just people talking to each other inside a car, which is not traditionally something very riveting, but it takes a talented director and writer in order to develop a situation like that into a very thrilling situation, a situation that prevents itself from being boring. I think Craig Zahler manages to do that. And so you've got the editing, the cinematography, as I said, production-wise, otherwise it's all very good. And S. Craig Zahler demonstrates his abilities quite well in Dragged Across Concrete. I thought Mel Gibson and Vince Vaughn, they play really well with each other. These guys are partners. As I said, they're in a disparate situation, and the banter that they have with each other I actually thought was quite decent. And it was very subtle in some areas, but it actually made me laugh. And so it does have that comic feel without going into the territory of a flat-out comedy. So that's the comedic sort of tone that this relationship of the main two characters has, it alleviates that sense of boredom. Is that, okay, if they're just sitting in a car in surveillance, basically conducting a sting, is that it needs something to keep you interested. And I think that light-hearted banter in the script works well to elevate it and prevent it from being bogged down into something that is boring. But unfortunately, putting all that aside, as I said, the script is very good, but unfortunately the film is a little bit too long, and I thought that the continuity could have been a lot more fluent. Now, what I mean by that is I think that S. Craig Zahler gets lost in the fact that it is a good script and that it is interesting as far as these characters are concerned, but unfortunately the script doesn't do enough to really make me feel as though everything was utilised. Now, what I mean by that is that these characters, yes, they were facing desperate situations, but it was more a case of actually witnessing something as far as the script is concerned at that particular moment. It doesn't give you an an in-depth analysis of what these characters are like, and so I really couldn't relate to them as much as I wanted to, because it was more a case of seeing something on face value. So whether it's the script that keeps you from being bored in a specific scene, but the script isn't being used to develop these characters in a way where I could genuinely connect to them. They were doing horrible things, they were breaking the law, so you ask yourself, why do I care so much? But unfortunately, you don't care as much as it really could have, because the script is used in a way where it's at that particular moment, as opposed to giving you an in-depth response as far as a character is concerned. And so I thought to myself is that it was a good script, but the script wasn't used in the right ways, is because it just felt like he was showing off his talents as far as writing a script, but that script wasn't used in a way that I could really get into the actual story. And so you've got situations in this film where it's action and something's happening, and then all of a sudden it stops, and there's about a 10-minute period where it's just talking with each other. And yes, as I said, it demonstrates a lot of capabilities as far as the script is concerned, but it does get in the way of the continuity. Is that, okay, there's action, and there's a 10-minute spot of talking, and then there's another action scene, and then there's another 10-minute spot of talking with different people. And so I thought, all right, well, the script is very shallow. Although it's very well written, or as I said, although it's never boring, it is quite funny, I never felt as though it was used in the right way, and that right way would have been giving you a little bit more relatability to these characters, but instead it's just giving you something at that particular moment, whether it's making you laugh or whether it's making you think about what is going on through these people's minds, but I just didn't feel as though it went to them as people themselves. And so it felt like very stop-start and a disjointed experience, and so I thought to myself, well, something's not quite right here. And so it goes for 2.5 hours, and I thought that was way too long. It could have been cut down quite considerably, and if the script was used in a better way, instead basically developing these characters in a very three-dimensional way, I thought it could have been a lot better. But unfortunately, it's that disjointed feeling in the continuity of the film that really feels as though it just is something's not quite right. It's something that I had a problem with in Brawl and Cell Block 99. So I think that as Craig Zahler gets carried away a little bit in his ability to write, as opposed to telling a story in a very fluid way. So that's my biggest problem with Dragged Across Concrete. It's overlong. I just thought to myself that it felt disjointed. The fluency wasn't as good as it needed to be, and that's the reason why I come away from it feeling a little bit disappointed. So overall, for Dragged Across Concrete, going to give this one 2.5 stars. Still go out there and see it, especially if you're a fan of this director. Alright guys, this is my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies, and I'll see you later.